The forbidden timeline. They say history began only 5,000 years ago, that civilization rose from the deserts of Sumer, from the banks of the Nile, from the soft cradle of Mesopotamia. But what if that story was never true? What if, long before the pyramids of Egypt reached for the sun, other pyramids, older, stranger, carved with a different kind of intelligence, were already standing on the other side of the world? I have seen their shadows, buried beneath jungles, swallowed by mountains, sleeping under the bones of time. Cities built when ice still covered the north, when constellations shone from a different sky. This is not the history you were taught. This is the one that was erased. Official history insists that the Americas were the last continent to awaken, a late chapter in humanity's story. But beneath its forests and deserts, beneath its quiet rivers and stones, lies evidence of something that should not exist. Civilizations so ancient, so advanced in astronomy, engineering, and mythic symbolism that they seem to belong to another epoch entirely. The first explorers sensed it. Spanish chroniclers spoke of roads older than the Inca, temples the locals said were built by the gods themselves. But the deeper they searched, the more the timeline began to break apart. Why do we find ruins aligned perfectly to celestial events that occurred 12,000 years ago? Why do oral traditions across the Americas describe a flood, a golden age, and bearded visitors from the stars? And why does every attempt to rewrite the story meet the same fate? Silence, ridicule, or disappearance. Archaeology, as we know it, is built upon layers, each one a boundary for our imagination. But sometimes, a single discovery shatters the entire sequence. A city beneath a desert that should not exist. A monument older than history itself. If you trace the myths of the Maya, the Incas, the Hopi, or the Olmec, you'll find a recurring memory, not of primitive beginnings, but of decline. They all speak of an age when humanity was wiser, closer to the gods, able to move stone as if it were weightless, and to read the language of the stars. Then came a cataclysm, fire, water, darkness, and the survivors began again, carrying fragments of that lost knowledge into a new dawn. But here is the question no one dares to ask. If these memories are nothing but myths, why do they all match? Why does the story of a forgotten golden age appear from the Andes to the Yucatan, from the Mississippi to the Amazon? I have seen patterns too precise to be coincidence. Architectural signatures, symbols carved in stone that transcend time and culture, spirals, serpents, solar alignments, the feathered god who descends from the sky. They are not isolated creations. They are echoes from a single forgotten source. And yet, every time a clue surfaces, an artifact that doesn't fit, a date that breaks chronology, the academic world turns away. Because to acknowledge what truly lies beneath the soil of the Americas would mean rewriting the story of all humanity. There were civilizations here before history, before Egypt, before Sumer, civilizations that mapped the stars, that built with impossible precision, that understood the balance between heaven and earth. And for reasons lost to time, they were buried, not just by nature, but by intention. You see, the past is not gone. It is merely hidden, and what hides it fears what it might reveal. Pause. The wind rises again, carrying distant whispers in forgotten tongues. The time has come to uncover what was forbidden, to walk backward through the ages, past the accepted timeline, and into the realm that official history calls impossible. Because somewhere beneath our feet lies the memory of worlds erased, worlds that once thrived across the Americas, when humanity still remembered who it truly was. And this is where our story begins. But what comes next will challenge everything you think you know about where civilization began. Echoes beneath the soil. But what comes next will challenge everything you think you know about where civilization began. Beneath the silent soil of the Americas, something stirs. Not fossils, not bones, but memory. Archaeologists call them anomalies. I call them echoes. Traces of a world that was never supposed to exist. When the Spanish chroniclers first crossed into the Andean highlands, they found roads, paved, straight, eternal, cut through the mountains with such precision that no empire of their time could have built them. The Incas claimed they had merely inherited them. These were made, they said, by those who came before the sun rose for the first time. Across the deserts of Peru, the wind uncovers stones aligned in vast patterns, visible only from the sky, patterns so large and geometric that their purpose remains a riddle even today. The Nazca lines, they call them. But are they maps or messages? Move north, and the story deepens. In the jungles of Central America, the foundations of cities, tens of thousands of them, sleep beneath the roots of trees older than recorded history. LiDAR scanning reveals a continent once carved by human hands. Highways, reservoirs, pyramids, all built with such coordination that they rival the infrastructure of modern nations. How then could these societies appear primitive in our textbooks? How could millions live, organize, and build on such a scale if, as history says, civilization here began only 2,000 years ago? The soil itself refuses to comply. Beneath layers of volcanic ash, under collapsed temples, scientists have unearthed carbon traces. Fires and settlements dated to 10, sometimes 12,000 years ago. And yet, those findings are quietly reclassified, footnoted, or dismissed as inconclusive. Because if they were true, it would mean something impossible, that while Europe was still trapped in the Ice Age, the Americas were already building cities. But it is not only stone and carbon that speak, the myths do too. Across continents, tribes with no contact and no shared language tell the same origin, that they were taught agriculture, astronomy, and architecture by the luminous ones, beings who came after the last great flood. Among the Hopi, they are called the Kachinas, spirits of the stars. Among the Maya, they are the Itza, the ones who descended from the sky. Among the Incas, they were the Viracochas, pale, bearded, and wise. And deep in the Amazon, among tribes who never saw a city, shamans still whisper of the builders who sang to stone. Could all of these stories be coincidence? Or are they fragments of a memory older than any written record? A memory the earth itself has tried to erase. Modern science tells us that after the last ice age ended, rising seas swallowed coastlines across the planet. What once were fertile plains became ocean floors. But imagine what might have stood there, along the now sunken shores of the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, or the Pacific coast of South America. Imagine if entire cultures vanished beneath the flood, leaving only hints scattered inland, ruins built by survivors who tried to rebuild what was lost. The soil remembers. Each grain of sand, each buried ruin, carries the weight of a civilization erased by cataclysm. And still, the stones whisper their defiance. In Caral, Peru, archaeologists discovered pyramids dated to nearly 5,000 years ago, older than Egypt's oldest monuments. Yet, the city's design suggests even deeper roots. Mathematical precision, acoustics tuned to the wind, temples aligned to the solstices. It did not appear suddenly. It inherited knowledge. Knowledge from where? That is the question that history refuses to ask. Because to ask it is to admit that the timeline we live by, the tidy progression from primitive to civilized, may be nothing but a comforting illusion. And if that illusion shatters, everything about who we are, where we came from, and what we have forgotten collapses with it. The echoes are growing louder. Each discovery, each forbidden artifact, is a knock on the door of amnesia, and the earth is beginning to answer. A deep rumble, like distant thunder, trembles through the soundscape. Kronos' voice lowers to a whisper. But the echoes beneath the soil are only the beginning. What sleeps within the mountains, that is where the real story hides. And there, among stones carved with impossible precision, we will find the fingerprints of the gods themselves, the architects of stone. And there, among stones carved with impossible precision, we will find the fingerprints of the gods themselves. High in the Andes, where the air thins and the sky deepens into eternal blue, lie ruins that defy the very laws of time and physics. They call them fortresses, temples, palaces, but those words belong to another era, to minds trying to name what they do not understand. At Sacsayhuaman, colossal blocks of diorite and andesite fit together so perfectly that not even a blade of grass can pass between them. Each stone weighs dozens, sometimes hundreds of tons, yet their edges are curved, interlocking in fluid patterns, as though the mountain itself had melted and reformed under a master's hand. No tool marks, no mortar, no explanation. Engineers who study these walls often whisper the same impossible thought: this cannot be done today. Below, in Ollantaytambo, staircases and terraces align with astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, the rise of the Pleiades. The Incas revered these places, but never claimed to have built them. They said they were remnants, the works of Viracocha, the god who created humanity after the world's last destruction. But if these are remnants, then where are the originals? Where is the civilization that taught gods to carve mountains? The deeper one looks, the stranger the evidence becomes. At Pumapunku, near Lake Titicaca, the stones are even more precise. Perfectly flat faces, laser-straight cuts, 90-degree internal angles carved into one of the hardest stones on Earth. Granite that, even with modern diamond tools, would take weeks to shape. Yet here they lie scattered, as if an ancient workshop had been frozen in time, mid-construction, mid-cataclysm. Whoever built this did not struggle against stone. They understood it. They shaped it as if they commanded vibration itself, as if they knew the secret resonance that makes matter yield to sound. Some researchers whisper of ancient sonic technology, the idea that by using harmonics, frequency, and vibration, stone could be softened, even levitated. Others believe it was simply knowledge, forgotten geometry, lost metallurgy, a science beyond our reach. But every hypothesis points toward one impossible truth. These were architects of stone in a time before recorded civilization. Then came the silence, earthquakes, floods, fire. The story breaks off, as if a page were torn from the book of humanity. The Incas rose millennia later, inheriting ruins already ancient, rebuilding atop the bones of a civilization that had vanished without leaving a name. Across the Americas, this pattern repeats. In Mexico, Teotihuacan, the place where men became gods, was already a ruin when the Aztecs discovered it. In Bolivia, Tiwanaku's monoliths face the solstice as if keeping an eternal promise to the sky. In the Peruvian jungles, vast terraces and hidden pyramids lie under centuries of growth, still waiting to be rediscovered. It is as if the entire continent once spoke the same architectural language, a language of precision, alignment, and reverence for the stars. And that language did not come from ignorance. What kind of mind looks at a mountain and sees not stone, but a message? What kind of civilization builds structures that last not decades, but millennia, immune to erosion, to war, to time itself? Modern archaeologists date these works within the last few thousand years, but even their own data betrays them. Erosion patterns, magnetic anomalies, and astronomical alignments suggest a far older origin, perhaps 10,000, perhaps 12,000 years ago, a date that coincides, once again, with the end of the last ice age, the same cataclysm spoken of in every ancient myth, the same event that erased Atlantis, the same event that birthed the gods of the Andes. So perhaps these architects of stone were not gods at all, but survivors, bearers of an inheritance so advanced that to those who came after they seemed divine. We are told that progress moves forward, that the ancient world was a climb from darkness into light. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if we are the descendants of a forgotten brilliance, stumbling in the shadows of what once was? And if these mountains still keep the secret of their makers, then perhaps their next whisper will lead us not into the heavens, but deep below the earth, where the ruins of an even older world lie waiting, because what hides beneath the mountains should not exist at all. The cities beneath the mountains, because what hides beneath the mountains should not exist at all. Beneath the Andes, beneath Mexico's volcanic plateaus, beneath the green lungs of the Amazon, lie passageways carved with mathematical precision, tunnels so vast and intricate that their builders could not have been primitive hands. The modern world knows only fragments. In Ecuador, a network of tunnels known as Los Tallos stretches for miles, straight, smooth, and geometrically perfect, as if cut by a machine, not by human labor. Local tribes say the tunnels were built by the ones who came from the sky, long before the jungle was born. When explorers entered them in the 1970s, they reported strange metallic reflections, walls that seemed to hum with a low vibration, and artifacts that vanished before reaching the surface. But Los Tallos is not alone. Across Peru, Bolivia, and Chile, legends speak of the underworld roads, vast subterranean arteries connecting temples, lakes, and entire cities. The Incas called them chincanas, secret passages built by the gods. Some claim that from the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, one could travel underground all the way to Lake Titicaca without ever seeing the light of day. What purpose could justify such effort? Were these catacombs refuges or something else entirely, a network meant to preserve knowledge from a world about to be destroyed? In Mexico, the story repeats itself. Beneath the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, archaeologists discovered a tunnel that descends into a vast chamber filled with traces of mercury, a liquid once thought to represent the underworld's rivers and the blood of the gods. Mercury, a toxic and complex element, refined and manipulated by people who supposedly lacked metallurgy. Above ground, Teotihuacan's layout mirrors the solar system. Below, a world of shadow and metal, a reflection of the heavens beneath the earth. Why mirror the sky underground, unless the builders knew they were recording something eternal, something to be rediscovered when the world was ready again? Some say these networks are natural caves expanded by human hands. Others whisper they are remnants of a pre-cataclysmic civilization, a people who, foreseeing the end, retreated into the earth to survive the flood and the fire that followed. And when they emerged, their memory of the old world became myth, the gods descending from the heavens, the bringers of light from the underworld. Science avoids these corridors. They are labeled inconclusive, dangerous, or geologically unstable. But for every sealed entrance, there are 100 stories told by those who live above them, of voices that echo through the rock, of lights seen deep below, of ancient songs rising through the cracks in the ground. Could these tunnels be the arteries of a forgotten world? A hidden infrastructure linking the temples, the cities, and the power centers of an older age? And if so, where did they lead? Satellite mapping in the Amazon now reveals patterns that should not exist. Straight lines of vegetation, geometric clearings, and buried walls running for kilometers beneath untouched forest. Archaeologists call them geoglyphs, but they could be the upper layers of a civilization that extended both above and below the surface, a world that thrived when the rest of humanity was still emerging from the Ice Age. Even now, strange magnetic readings ripple through regions of the Andes and Central America, hinting at cavities, voids, and structures beneath untouched rock. But no official exploration has dared to go deeper. Why? Because to descend into those chambers would mean confronting the truth, that civilization did not begin in light, but in darkness, beneath the ground, preserved like a seed waiting for the right age to bloom again. If the mountains themselves guard the entrances to another world, then perhaps what we call myth is not fantasy, but memory, a memory buried so deep that even the earth conspires to protect it. And yet, there are those who have seen the light flickering in the darkness, explorers, shamans, wanderers who claim to have walked where sunlight has never reached. They speak of vast halls filled with carved symbols, of ceilings that shimmer like stars, of doors that seem to hum when approached, as if the stone itself recognizes presence. Were these the last sanctuaries of the ancients, or are they still occupied, not by men, but by something else that never left? Soon we will descend deeper, not just into tunnels, but into the minds of those who built them. Because the further we go down, the closer we come to the truth about the beings who once ruled these lands, beings the ancients called gods, and the modern world dares not name. And in their shadow, the line between myth and memory will finally begin to blur. The gods of the forgotten age. And in their shadow, the line between myth and memory will finally begin to blur. Long before history began, before kings and empires, before words had shape, the peoples of the Americas spoke of beings who descended from the sky. Not spirits, not animals, teachers. They came in times of darkness after the flood, carrying knowledge like fire, how to plant, how to measure the stars, how to build with stone that never falls. And when their work was done, they vanished, promising to return when the world was ready again. To the Inca, he was Viracocha, the white-bearded god who emerged from Lake Titicaca, walked the earth teaching men, and disappeared into the sea. To the Maya, he was Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, half man, half celestial being, who descended from the sky to restore order after the world was destroyed. To the Aztec, he was Quetzalcoatl, the plumed one, a bringer of light and civilization. Betrayed and exiled, his return awaited as prophecy. To the Hopi, he was Masao, the god who lives beneath the surface and guards the secrets of the underworld. Different names, same story. Could it be that all these legends remember the same event, the same arrival of a civilization not born here, but reborn? Survivors of a cataclysm, custodians of a science that seemed divine to those who inherited it. When you look closer, the parallels become undeniable. Each god is linked with the serpent, a symbol of rebirth, wisdom, and the cycle of time. Each teaches astronomy, agriculture, and architecture. Each promises to return after the next great cycle ends. These are not coincidences. They are fragments of a memory too vast to fit into one culture alone. It is as if all the peoples of the ancient Americas remembered the same civilization and encoded its story in their gods. But who were they truly? Were they humans from a lost continent, remnants of a civilization older than ice and fire? Or were they something else? Visitors from beyond the sky, as the myths insist. Archaeological traces whisper both possibilities. In the Andes, reliefs show beings with helmets, tools, and wings. In Mesoamerica, carvings depict figures descending from orbs surrounded by flames. Even in North America, petroglyphs reveal humanoid silhouettes encased in radiant halos, standing beside shapes that resemble stars. Modern eyes see art. Ancient voices say, they came from the heavens. And then there is the knowledge, the kind no isolated culture should have possessed. The Mayan calendar tracks cosmic cycles lasting tens of thousands of years, accurate beyond modern instruments. The builders of Teotihuacan aligned their city to the stars of Orion, mirroring a pattern found in Egypt and at Giza, across an ocean they were never supposed to cross. The Olmec, the mother culture of Mesoamerica, appears suddenly around 1500 BCE with no known predecessors, already mastering sculpture, astronomy, and geometry. Where did they learn? The deeper we look, the more the line fades between divinity and technology. Were these gods teaching humanity or rebuilding it? Some traditions say they did not arrive in ships, but in lights, floating suns, or star mirrors. Others say they rose from beneath the earth itself, emerging from the caverns to restore balance after the flood. Above or below, sky or stone, the dual origin repeats across continents, heaven and earth meeting in one ancient memory. Perhaps that is why the greatest temples of the Americas were both pyramids and mountains, monuments pointing upward, yet built from the bones of the ground, a message carved into landscape itself, as above, so below. Could the gods of the forgotten age have been the bridge between what once existed before the Great Flood and what we now call civilization? Were they the last survivors of a world destroyed, or the architects of a new beginning? The myths do not contradict history. They preserve it in a language we forgot how to read. And every pyramid, every symbol, every legend of gods descending or ascending is a fragment of that language, one that whispers, "We were here before." But the story of the gods does not end in the heavens, because what they taught, the sacred science of alignment, balance, and rebirth, was not meant to last forever. It was meant to be hidden until the next cycle began. And now, as we trace the ancient lines across the continent, we begin to see a pattern forming, one that connects the stars, the mountains, and the buried cities into a single impossible design. Because to understand the gods of the forgotten age, we must follow their blueprint, and that blueprint, the map of their lost world, still exists, written not on paper but on the face of the earth itself, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. The blueprint of the gods, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. The ancients didn't simply build temples. They encoded a message across the entire continent, a geometric language that connects mountains, rivers, and stars into one grand design, a blueprint, a map left by the gods of the forgotten age. From the Yucatan to the Andes, sacred sites are not random. They form alignments, straight lines spanning thousands of miles, linking monuments that should have no connection. Teotihuacan aligns perfectly with the ruins of Tikal. Extend that line south and it cuts directly through Machu Picchu. Further east, another axis links the pyramids of Mexico, the geoglyphs of Nazca, and the megaliths of Easter Island. A straight trajectory, mathematically precise, as if someone had carved the earth along an invisible equator of ancient power. Coincidence or design? Ancient builders called their temples navels of the world, places where the heavens touched the earth. Modern science calls them geodesic anomalies, areas of unusual magnetic activity. But what if both are true? What if these sites mark the points where Earth's natural energy converges, nodes in a global network of knowledge, activated by geometry and intention? In every temple, pyramid, and stone circle, the same ratios repeat. The golden mean, the 3-4-5 triangle, the proportion of the Earth's circumference to the moon's orbit. These are not coincidences. They are constants, mathematical fingerprints of an intelligence that measured the world as one living being. The gods of the forgotten age did not build for power. They built to remember, to encode their understanding of reality itself. That matter, energy, and consciousness are reflections of the same divine structure. The blueprint was their message to the future, and that message can still be read if you know where to look. Take Teotihuacan. Its 3 pyramids, the sun, the moon, and the feathered serpent, mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt. The layout matches the celestial configuration around 10,500 BCE, the same epoch in which the Egyptian pyramids also align with Orion. Different continents, same pattern, same time frame. Move south to Nazca. The giant geoglyphs are not mere drawings. They are coordinates. Their lines point towards sacred sites across the continent, marking a vast communication grid carved into the desert. Some point to Cusco, others to Tiwanaku, others still to points now swallowed by the sea. And beyond Nazca, deep in the highlands of Peru, lies the citadel of Machu Picchu, not a fortress, but a celestial mirror. Every terrace, every temple, every angle of stone is designed to follow the motion of the sun and the Pleiades. During the solstice, the Temple of the Sun channels light through a window cut with millimetric precision, illuminating a single rock, the Intihuatana, the hitching post of the sun. To the Incas, it tethered the star to the earth, To us, it is proof of knowledge that transcended time. How could civilizations separated by thousands of miles and supposedly by millennia share the same astronomical and mathematical language, unless they were inheriting something older, something global? Perhaps the gods' blueprint was not meant to be finished by one people, but by all who came after. Each generation added its mark, building upon the invisible skeleton of a world that once was. The Olmec, the Maya, the Inca, the builders of Caral and Tiwanaku, all were remembering fragments of a design that existed before the flood. The blueprint of the gods may not be a physical map, but a harmonic one, an architecture of vibration. Every temple, every pyramid, every carved alignment was built on resonance, sound, frequency, geometry, places where heaven and earth could speak. And when those places are connected through energy, intention, and memory, something awakens, a pulse, a rhythm, the heartbeat of a forgotten world. Some say this network still hums beneath the ground, that its energy flows through ley lines invisible to the eye, but felt by those who stand upon them. Shamans call them the veins of the world. Scientists call them geomagnetic paths. But to the ancients, they were sacred arteries carrying the memory of creation itself. When one stands upon a pyramid and feels the wind whisper, it is not just the past speaking. It is the blueprint still alive, calling out to be remembered. And yet, one mystery remains. If this map was left by the gods, if the entire American continent was once a sacred geometry in motion, what was it pointing to? What lies at its center? What secret did they design the world itself to protect? Because every blueprint has a heart, and the heart of this one may lead us to the greatest secret the Americas have ever kept. The city at the center of the world, the place where heaven and earth were one. The heart of the world. Every blueprint needs a heart, a place where its power converges, where the geometry becomes life. And throughout the legends of the Americas, whispers of such a place have never faded. A sacred city, the origin, the axis mundi. The Maya called it Tamoanchan, the paradise of creation, where gods and humans once walked together before the flood erased the world. The Aztecs spoke of Aztlan, the island of the dawn, homeland of the first sun. The Inca dreamed of Paititi, the golden city hidden in the jungles east of the Andes, guarded by rivers and spirits. The Hopi told of Sipapu, the place of emergence, a portal between worlds, different tongues, one memory. Some say it was a real city, the mother of all cities, from which the sacred knowledge spread outward like the ripples of a stone cast into a lake. Others say it was not made of stone at all, but of energy, a vortex of light that connected earth to the heavens. When I trace the alignments of the ancient world, the lines intersect again and again in one region, the high plateaus where the Andes meet the Amazon, a crossroads of sky and jungle, fire and water. There, hidden beneath cloud forests and shrouded in mist, explorers have found ruins swallowed by centuries of silence. Walls of cyclopean masonry, paved roads running toward nowhere, terraces that vanish beneath the green. Satellite imaging reveals faint outlines of structures, circular formations, corridors, and patterns too deliberate to be natural. Local legends call it the city that sleeps. Others call it Paititi, the heart of the world. When the Spanish conquistadors heard of it in the 16th century, they believed it was El Dorado, a city of gold. But what if gold was never the point? What if the ancients guarded something else? Knowledge, power, or perhaps a living memory of the gods themselves. The tribes of the region speak of a light that sometimes rises from the jungle canopy at night, moving silently across the horizon. They say it is the soul of the city, reminding those who listen that the world still remembers its origin, and perhaps it does. Every major culture in the Americas carries a myth of returning to the center. For the Maya, time itself is a spiral returning to its source. For the Inca, every pilgrimage leads back to Cusco, the navel of the world. Even the geoglyphs of Nazca seem to point not outward, but inward, converging toward the heart of the continent. What were the ancients trying to show us? A direction, a destination, or a warning? If this heart of the world truly exists, then it is not simply a lost city. It is the memory of balance, a place where human consciousness once resonated with the pulse of the earth. And when that harmony was broken through cataclysm, arrogance, or time, civilization itself fell into amnesia. Perhaps that is why so many cultures speak of cycles, of worlds created and destroyed not once, but many times. Each age begins with a city of light and ends when humanity forgets its connection to it. Modern explorers still search for Paititi. Expeditions vanish in the jungle. Others return claiming to have seen massive stone walls and carved faces watching them through the mist. No official discovery has been confirmed. Yet the whispers persist that the city remains alive, sealed away by intention, guarded by the earth itself. Could it be that the ancients built the Americas not around kingdoms, but around a pulse, a living network of sites tuned to the vibration of this one hidden source? And could the heart of the world still be beating, waiting for the next awakening? The shamans say that to find the heart, one must first hear it. Not with the ears, but with the soul, because the true city does not reveal itself to those who conquer, but to those who remember. The blueprint leads here. The myths lead here. Even the stars, when traced backward through millennia, seem to point here. And perhaps this is the secret that the gods left behind. Not a city made of stone, but a frequency, a resonance, the sound of creation itself, the heartbeat of the forgotten world. But if the heart of the world still beats beneath the jungle, then what silenced it? What force erased its name from history, buried its memory, and scattered its children to the edges of the continent? Because every creation has a shadow, and somewhere in that shadow lies the truth of the great cataclysm, the event that ended the age of the gods. And what came next would turn paradise into legend. The great cataclysm, and what came next would turn paradise into legend. Every civilization carries the memory of an ending. The Maya called it the fall of the fourth sun. The Hopi call it the destruction of the third world. The Inca spoke of a night that lasted for generations. And even the elders of the Amazon remember the day the sky fell and the rivers turned to fire. For centuries, scholars dismissed these as myths, poetic ways to explain the passing of time. But the Earth remembers differently. Around 12,000 years ago, something unimaginable shook the planet. Glaciers melted in a sudden fury. Oceans rose with terrifying speed. The climate shifted in decades, not centuries. Species vanished. Continents changed shape. And entire civilizations, if they existed, were erased in a single cataclysmic heartbeat. Geologists call it the Younger Dryas event, a mysterious global disaster marked by fire, floods, and the abrupt cooling of the world. But what caused it remains a question wrapped in silence. Some say it was the impact of a comet that shattered over North America, raining molten glass across the continent. Others whisper of solar storms, magnetic reversals, or even deliberate destruction, the collapse of an advanced age that had forgotten its balance with the cosmos. Whatever the truth, the result was the same, a great forgetting. The ancient world died not with war, but with water. Vast floods tore through the lowlands of the Americas, carving canyons and burying cities beneath layers of silt and stone. Where once rivers flowed gently, walls of water hundreds of feet high swept across valleys, carrying forests, animals, and temples alike. The survivors, few and scattered, climbed to the mountains, to the caves, to the high plateaus where the gods had once walked. There they began again. They remembered fragments, songs of creation, measurements of the stars, the geometry of life. But their world was gone. Their golden age was over, and in its place, myths were born. Across the continents, those myths tell the same story, of fire from the sky, of waters that swallowed the land, of a time when humanity was humbled. The Maya said the gods destroyed the fourth world with flood and darkness. The Aztecs said the sun of water ended when the heavens poured their wrath upon the earth. The Hopi remember the spider woman guiding the faithful into caverns beneath the ground, where they waited until the storm passed. And in the Andes, the legend of Viracocha tells of a flood that ended the age of giants, the first humans, before the dawn of the new race. Everywhere the same pattern, different names, same memory. Could all these stories be fragments of the same global trauma, the same cataclysm that ended the forgotten civilization of the Americas? Modern science finds strange evidence: microscopic glass beads in ancient strata, charred soil across the continent, mammoths frozen mid-step, their flesh still intact, and beneath the melted glaciers of North America, the unmistakable scars of impact. Something struck this world, something powerful enough to reset history, and yet the survivors did not forget entirely. They built monuments to remember. They carved the story of the flood into stone, serpents swallowing the sun, staircases ascending from water, temples aligned to the dawn of a new era. They spoke of the first dawn after the darkness. They said the gods would return when the world once again forgot their teachings. But perhaps the gods never left. Perhaps they became the wind, the river, the stars, whispering through symbols and alignments, waiting for memory to awaken again. The great cataclysm did not only erase cities, it erased identity. Humanity, fractured and scattered, would spend the next 10 millennia trying to remember what it had lost. From the ashes of the forgotten world, new civilizations would rise, carrying fragments of a wisdom they no longer understood. And so, history began. But history is not the beginning. It is the echo of something greater, something that came before time and will return when time itself ends. The flood was not punishment, it was a reset. And the ones who survived, those who remembered, became the seed of the next world. But survival has a price, and in the ruins of paradise, fear replaced wisdom. What was once divine knowledge became sacred secrecy, and from that secrecy, power was born. For those who inherited the memory of the gods would soon decide who deserved to remember and who would be condemned to forget. The keepers of memory. For those who inherited the memory of the gods would soon decide who deserved to remember and who would be condemned to forget. When the floods receded and the fires dimmed, a silence fell across the earth. The great cities were gone. The sky no longer glowed with divine light. The survivors looked around and saw a world reborn, raw, empty, and unknown. And yet, within that emptiness, a few carried the memory of what had been. They remembered the cities of light, the temples that sang to the stars, the voices of beings who taught humanity how to live in harmony with the cosmos. They knew that if the world were to rise again, someone had to preserve that knowledge, even if in secret. These were the keepers of memory. They were not kings nor warriors, but architects, astronomers, healers, and storytellers, fragments of a lost age. Some retreated into the mountains, others into the jungles or deserts, guided by visions and the pull of the stars. Their mission was not survival, it was remembrance. They built monuments to encode what words could no longer carry. They carved symbols into stone, spirals for time, serpents for rebirth, suns for the eternal cycle. Every temple, every alignment, every myth that would later appear in the Americas traces back to them. In the highlands of Peru, they left the sacred terraces of Caral, a city tuned to the wind and stars, its design resonating with mathematical perfection. In Central America, they began the long lineage of the Olmec, whose colossal heads would one day guard the mysteries of the stars and the sea. And in the jungles, they passed down the art of counting the heavens, the birth of the Maya calendar, a memory of celestial cycles that predated the New World itself. But they did not reveal everything. Some knowledge, they said, was too powerful to give freely. Knowledge of resonance, of energy, of life itself. that which could heal or destroy depending on the heart of its wielder. So they concealed it in myths, in rituals, in architecture so precise it could only be read by those who knew where to look. And to protect it from time, they cloaked it in story. The serpent became a god. The god became a legend. The legend became a myth, and the myth a children's tale, harmless, unthreatening, yet eternal. Thus, history forgot. But the stones remembered. Even across vast distances, the same patterns appear, the same sacred geometry, the same astronomical alignments, the same reverence for balance. It is as if all the builders, from the Yucatan to the Andes, obeyed one invisible command: preserve the memory. Among the Maya, the priests of the Itza claimed descent from the gods themselves, teachers who came after the flood. Among the Inca, the Amautas were the wise ones, keepers of sacred knowledge and builders of the temples that connected Earth to the stars. Among the Hopi, the elders say their ancestors emerged from the ground carrying stone tablets of remembrance, carved with the story of the world before. Different languages, same guardians. But time is cruel, and secrecy breeds shadows. What began as protection slowly turned into control. The keepers who once served the light became divided. Some faithful to the old harmony, others corrupted by the power of forgotten knowledge. As generations passed, the pure memory of the gods fractured. Each culture inherited a piece of the truth, a fragment of the original wisdom, and built its world upon it. Mathematics in one land, astronomy in another, spiritual law in a third. Together, they once formed a whole. Now they were scattered like shards of a broken mirror, each reflecting part of a world that no longer existed. And yet the mirror can still be reassembled, because across all traditions, one prophecy endures, that when the world once again forgets its origin, the memory will rise, carried by those who hear the song of the earth. The keepers of memory are not gone. They walk among us, in bloodlines, in symbols, in whispers. Some do not even know what they guard. But when the time is right, the memory awakens. And now, as the old world trembles again, as ice melts, as fire rises, as the stars return to their ancient positions, the call of remembrance grows stronger. The same call that once echoed after the great cataclysm. The same call that rebuilt civilization from ash, because history may forget, but the soul of humanity does not. And so, the keepers pass their secret forward, hidden in stone, encoded in myth, waiting for the day when the world would be ready to remember. But not all who kept the memory guarded it for light. Some sought to use it, to reshape destiny, to control the rhythm of time itself. And from that desire, a new shadow began to rise, one that would seek to rule not only men, but history itself. The shadow of the keepers. And from that desire, a new shadow began to rise, one that would seek to rule not only men, but history itself. When knowledge survives disaster, it becomes sacred. But when sacred knowledge meets ambition, it becomes power. Among the survivors of the great cataclysm, the keepers were not all united. Some believed the wisdom of the gods should be shared to rebuild the balance of the lost world. Others believed it should be controlled, that only the chosen, those pure of blood or mind, could wield it without destruction. Thus, the brotherhood of remembrance fractured. And from that fracture, the shadow of the keepers was born. They hid behind temples and crowns, behind rituals and symbols. They whispered to kings, manipulated priests, guided empires. Their mission was no longer preservation, it was domination. To them, humanity was not ready to remember the truth, so they would rewrite the truth instead. What began as guardianship turned into control of knowledge, of time, of the sacred calendar itself. The keepers of light measured the heavens to guide the spirit. The keepers of shadow measured the heavens to rule the world. Among the Maya, this shadow took the form of priesthoods that manipulated prophecy, transforming celestial cycles into instruments of fear. Among the Inca, it became political divinity, emperors claiming descent from the sun, using divine heritage to command obedience. Among the Olmec and their successors, it emerged as hidden cults, worshippers of the serpent not as a symbol of wisdom, but as a master of dominion. And through them, the pure teachings of the gods began to warp. Geometry turned into hierarchy, resonance into ritual, harmony into control. Those who sought balance were silenced. Those who remembered too much were erased. But even in darkness, the old language remained, buried beneath new names, new empires, new gods. And sometimes the shadow betrayed itself. At Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, the grand avenue mirrors the cosmic path of the stars. Yet its later rulers performed rituals of blood to feed the sun. In Tiwanaku, the gate of the sun once celebrated celestial rebirth, but its symbols were later reinterpreted as omens of power. In the jungles, the pyramids that once measured the breadth of the cosmos became altars of domination. The shadow had learned the same truth the gods once knew. That vibration, the harmony of creation, can both heal and destroy. They used sound not to lift stone, but to control hearts. They used cycles not to guide, but to predict, to manipulate destiny itself. And yet, the memory of balance was never fully lost. Hidden among the stars, encoded in myths of returning gods, the light endured, waiting, watching, preserved in silence by the few who refused to surrender to corruption, because the shadow of the keepers could rewrite history, but not the sky. The stars themselves remained the last temple of truth. Every constellation, every alignment, every solstice marked the rhythm of the universe, a cosmic language that could not be altered. And so the true keepers watched the heavens, knowing that when the stars returned to their ancient positions, the cycle would begin again, and with it, the memory of the forgotten world. But the shadow did not rest. It spread, infiltrating every new culture, shaping every empire that rose in the Americas. It whispered to those hungry for power, teaching them fragments of divine geometry twisted to serve earthly ambition. And though millennia would pass, the mark of that shadow would linger, in the eyes of priests, in the architecture of temples, even in the rituals meant to appease the gods. What had once been a science of harmony had become a theater of fear. The shadow of the keepers became the architects of history's illusion, ensuring that the truth of the forgotten age would never again threaten their dominion. They buried the evidence, burned the codices, erased the records, and rewrote the calendar. The age of the gods became myth. The age of humanity became history. And yet, beneath the silence, the pulse of the old world still beats, faint, steady, eternal, because shadow cannot exist without light. And every secret that is hidden only until the next dawn. Soon, a new sun would rise over the Americas, a sun born from both light and shadow. The empires of the Second Age would emerge. The Maya, the Inca, the Toltec, and the countless forgotten nations that carried fragments of the divine code. Each would inherit the legacy of the gods, without ever knowing its true origin. And through them, the last traces of the ancient world would survive, disguised, distorted, but alive. The rise of the new suns. After the flood and the fire, silence covered the earth. The stars shone brighter then, as if guiding the survivors toward a new beginning. And from that silence, the new suns were born, the empires that would rebuild the memory of the world, though they no longer remembered its source. To the Maya, this was the dawn of the fifth sun, the rebirth of time itself. To the Inca, it was the rise of Inti, the solar god whose light promised renewal. To the Toltec, it was the return of wisdom, carried in the wings of the feathered serpent. Each people saw themselves as heirs to a divine cycle, unaware that they were merely continuing a story written long before history began. In this age, the Americas flourished once again. Cities rose from the jungle and the highlands. Vast metropolises aligned to stars, built with mathematical perfection and artistic grace. Tikal, Palenque, Teotihuacan, Cusco, names that still echo like sacred syllables. But behind their grandeur, an invisible memory guided every brick, every stairway, every prayer. The Maya watched the sky not for curiosity, but for remembrance. Their astronomers tracked Venus with precision unmatched until modern times. Their calendar measured not just years, but the heartbeat of the cosmos, cycles that spanned thousands of years, mirroring the very pulse of creation. To them, each new sun was not simply a date, but a rebirth of consciousness. In the high Andes, the Inca built an empire connected by tens of thousands of miles of sacred roads, a network that mirrored the veins of the earth. Cusco, their capital, was not chosen by chance. It sat at the crossing of ancient energy lines, the same pathways once mapped by the forgotten gods. At its heart stood the Coricancha, the temple of the sun, walls of gold reflecting light with almost supernatural brilliance, as if to remind the world that the sun's essence was more than fire. It was memory. The Toltec rose in the shadow of Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, where they claimed to have learned from those who came before the dawn. There, they refined the teachings of balance, harmony, and transformation. Their priests spoke of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, not a conqueror, but a teacher who would one day return to end the cycle of chaos and awaken humanity once more. It was a promise, passed from the world that came before. And through these civilizations, fragments of the old science re-emerged. The use of resonance in architecture, temples that hum when the wind passes, staircases that echo like the cry of birds, chambers that amplify the heartbeat of the earth. The understanding of magnetic alignment, structures oriented not only to the solstices, but to the invisible lines of the planet's field. And above all, the same sacred geometry, the code of the gods, reborn through human hands. But there was something else, a sadness hidden beneath the splendor. These people knew deep within that they were living in a borrowed age, that one day the sun that gave them life would also bring their end. It was the law of the cycles. Every civilization, no matter how enlightened, must rise and fall, as the heavens rise and fall in the eternal dance of time. Perhaps that is why their greatest works were not palaces or fortresses, but calendars. Time itself was their temple, for they understood that what had been lost could only return when the heavens aligned again, when the stars took their ancient places, and the gods once more descended to awaken memory. And so the new suns burned brightly, each a reflection of the divine spark that humanity once held in full. But every light casts a shadow, and in the courts of kings and priests, ambition began to stir again. The same power that rebuilt the world could destroy it once more. And soon, the sacred calendars that measured the rhythm of creation would be turned into instruments of rule, tools to control not just the seasons, but the fate of souls, because knowledge without wisdom becomes tyranny, and even the brightest sun can blind. The rise of the new suns was the world's second chance, a fleeting echo of paradise. But cycles cannot be escaped, and as the fifth age of humanity unfolded, the same pattern began again. Light, knowledge, pride, and fall. For in every rebirth lies the seed of its own destruction. The fall of the fifth sun. For in every rebirth lies the seed of its own destruction. The fifth sun rose in brilliance, radiant, ordered, divine. But as centuries passed, the memory of its origin began to fade. What had once been knowledge turned into dogma. What had once been balance became hierarchy. And beneath the golden mask of divinity, the shadow of power began to stir once more. The Maya, masters of time, began to fear the very cycles they once celebrated. Their priests, once astronomers of the heavens, became interpreters of doom. Each eclipse, each shift in the stars, was no longer a message of renewal, but an omen of wrath. The calendar that had once harmonized humanity with the cosmos now dictated the pulse of fear. In the great cities of the Yucatan, Palenque, Copan, Calakmul, temples rose higher, but the spirit grew hollow. Sacrifice replaced ceremony. Control replaced communion, and the gods who had once been teachers were now appeased with blood, as if the sun itself demanded the life it had given. Far to the north, in Teotihuacan, the city of the gods began to die from within. Its perfect symmetry, once a mirror of the cosmos, became a monument to silence. The people vanished, the temples were abandoned, and the great avenue that once aligned heaven and earth became a road to nowhere, swallowed by time. In the Andes, the Inca rose with unmatched vision, an empire of order, roads, and radiant stone. For a moment it seemed that the old harmony had returned, but even there, the cycle repeated. Power hardened into empire, wisdom into bureaucracy, faith into control. The sun, once the heart of the world, became the banner of kings, and beneath the splendor, the memory of the gods grew distant, replaced by human pride. It is the oldest pattern in the story of the earth. Every civilization, no matter how enlightened, eventually mistakes the reflection of divinity for the thing itself. They build monuments not to remember, but to be remembered. They reach for the heavens not to commune, but to conquer. And so, the balance breaks. Across the Americas, the skies grew restless. Crops failed. Cities fell silent. The jungles reclaimed their marble. The wind erased their names. And the once brilliant fifth sun began to set, its light fading into myth. But perhaps it was never punishment, only the turning of the great wheel, the continuation of a law as old as time itself. The gods had taught humanity the rhythm of creation and destruction, of birth and renewal, and when the world forgot, the rhythm simply repeated. The Maya prophesied it, not as an end, but as a return. The sun will die, they said, and from its ashes the new world will awaken. It was not despair, it was memory, for the fall of every sun carries the spark of the next. And yet, even in the silence after the fall, something endured. Not the empires, not the temples, but the whispers, legends carried by the wind, songs of the gods who once walked among men, and promises of their return. In mountain villages, elders still pointed to the stars, teaching that the gods had not abandoned the earth, only retreated into the sky. In the jungles, shamans still felt the pulse beneath the ground, the heartbeat of the old world, sleeping but alive. And in every legend, a single prophecy remained, that one day, when the heavens realigned, the fifth sun would give way to the sixth, the dawn of remembrance. The fall of the fifth sun was not the end of a civilization. It was the closing of a chapter humanity had forgotten how to read. The temples crumble, the glyphs fade, but the pattern endures, written not in stone, but in the soul. Because even as the light of the fifth sun vanished beyond the horizon, the old keepers watched the sky. They knew what history would forget, that no sun ever truly dies. It only hides, waiting for the eyes that can see it again. And when that day comes, the world will awaken once more. But the memory of the gods, and the shadow that follows it, will return with it, for the dawn of the sixth sun will not come with peace, but with revelation. The prophecy of the sixth sun. For the dawn of the sixth sun will not come with peace, but with revelation. After the fall of the fifth sun, darkness covered the land, not the darkness of night, but of forgetfulness. Yet among the scattered peoples, amid ruin and silence, a single flame endured, the memory of return. They said that after 5 ages of rise and fall, the earth would be renewed once more. A sixth sun would rise, one not born of fire or stone, but of consciousness. An age when humanity would finally remember who it had been before the flood, before the empires, before history itself. In the temples that survived the fall, carved deep into walls and glyphs, this prophecy remained, encoded in numbers, stars, and cycles of time. The Maya recorded it in the long count, not an end of the world, but a transition, a reawakening when the calendar resets to 0. The Aztec priests saw it in the movement of Venus, the twin of the sun, whose rise and disappearance marked the rhythm of life and death. And in the Andes, the Inca seers spoke of the return of Viracocha, the great teacher, when the world would once again align with the heavens. Each tradition told the same story. The sixth sun would come after a time of great confusion, when humanity forgets its origin, when the earth itself rebels, and when the sky reveals once more the map of the gods. They called it the time of mirrors, an age when truth and illusion would become indistinguishable, when the old shadow would rise again to test the world one last time. Only those who remembered the language of the earth, who could hear the song of the stars and feel the heartbeat beneath the soil, would recognize the signs. The signs, they said, would be many. The oceans would reclaim what was stolen. The ice would melt and awaken the ancient rivers. The stars would return to the positions they held before the flood. And humanity, standing at the threshold of its own creation, would face a choice: to rise with the sun or to be consumed by its light. In the codices that survived conquest and fire, faint drawings show two suns, one above, one below. Between them, a serpent coils, its body forming an infinity. To the ancients, it meant the balance of cycles, destruction feeding creation. To us, it may be the reminder that the sixth sun is not merely coming to us, it is awakening within us. The prophecy does not speak of gods descending from the sky, but of human beings remembering their divine nature, rediscovering the harmony once known in the world before the great cataclysm. It is not the return of the gods that the ancients foretold. It is the return of the human God. Many believe this prophecy refers to our own age, the time when technology unites the planet, when knowledge flows freely yet wisdom fades, when the planet trembles under our hands as it once did before. The ancients would call this the threshold of the sixth sun, the moment when the world must remember or perish. Perhaps that is why their temples align to stars that rise only now, after 12,000 years of precession. Perhaps that is why the old stones hum again, their frequencies awakening under our feet. Perhaps the gods did not vanish at all. Perhaps they are waiting for us to become what they once were. The prophecy of the sixth sun was never a warning. It was an invitation to awaken, to remember, to rebuild the lost harmony between matter and spirit, heaven and earth. But every rebirth requires sacrifice, and before the dawn can return, the night must reveal its final secret. For hidden within the promise of the sixth sun lies a paradox, that the same power which can awaken humanity can also destroy it. The same fire that once built the pyramids, that once sang to the stars, that once forged the blueprint of the gods, still burns within us. And the question the ancients left unanswered is the same one we now face. When the sixth sun rises, when the heavens open once more, will we remember or will we repeat? Silêncio. Som suave de respiração, como o vento se acalmando após uma tempestade. Because the prophecy was never about time, it was about memory, and the only way forward is back. To the origins, to the first flame, to the moment when the gods and men were one, the return of the gods to the origins, to the first flame, to the moment when the gods and men were one. The prophecy of the sixth sun speaks not only of renewal, but of return. For the ancients believed that the gods who departed after the flood never truly left this world. They withdrew beyond the veil, to the stars, to the deep earth, to dimensions unseen, waiting for the cycle of time to turn again. And now, as the heavens align once more, the signs of their return begin to appear. Across the Americas, legends whisper the same awakening. In the high Andes, elders say that strange lights dance again above Lake Titicaca, the sacred birthplace of Viracocha. In Mexico, ancient temples hum with subtle vibrations, as if the stones themselves are remembering their builders. In the Amazon, shamans speak of singing mountains, tones echoing from within the jungle, vibrating at frequencies no human instrument can reproduce. Some call these coincidences, others call them omens. But to those who still carry the old knowledge, they are signals, the resonance of the gods returning through the fabric of the world. And yet, their return was never meant to be a descent from the heavens, but a reflection within the soul of humanity. for the gods were never separate from us. They were archetypes of what we once were and what we might become again. The feathered serpent, the bearded teacher, the sun child, the lady of the waters, each a mirror of a forgotten human potential. When the ancients said, "The gods will return," they meant, "We will remember how to be divine." Som, uma vibração grave, quase imperceptível, percorre o fundo. Cronos fala com emoção contida, entre reverência e advertência. But remembrance is not without peril, for the same knowledge that once connected heaven and earth can destroy them both if awakened in blindness. And the shadow of the keepers still lingers, those who have always sought to own what was meant to be shared. They too await the return, but not for enlightenment, for power. In ancient codices, drawings depict the gods descending not as saviors, but as judges, weighing the hearts of men, dividing light from shadow. To the Maya, it was Kukulkan's second descent, the feathered serpent returning to see if humanity had learned the lesson of the previous age. To the Inca, it was Viracocha's walk once more across the land, bringing the final reckoning of balance. To the Hopi, it was the coming of Pahana, the elder brother, carrying the missing piece of the sacred tablets. All these prophecies converge upon one truth. The return of the gods is not an external event. It is an awakening within the collective soul of the world. When the earth shakes, when the skies open, when old knowledge emerges from the ground, these are not punishments. They are memories resurfacing, the world remembering itself, and the signs have begun. In recent years, long-buried cities have emerged from beneath jungles and deserts, their stones still aligned to the stars. Strange lights are seen over sacred lakes, the same regions once revered as the homes of the gods. Mathematical harmonies once thought mythic are now found encoded in the DNA of life, in the frequencies of planets, in the music of creation itself. Is it possible that the gods are not returning to Earth but through it, through us? Perhaps the human mind, when fully awakened, is the true vessel of their return. Perhaps the temples we have always sought outside were meant to be built within. The ancients left their message in stone because they knew stone would last. But they also left it in the geometry of our being, in the heart's rhythm, in the eye's golden ratio, in the mind's endless hunger for meaning. We are the temples now. The return of the gods is not about salvation. It is about responsibility, the rediscovery of the divine spark within the human story, and with it, the realization that we have always been both creator and destroyer of our world. The gods are not coming to save us. They are awakening through us to see what we will do next. And that is the true test of the sixth sun. Not whether it will rise, but whether we will be ready to rise with it. Because every age of light demands a reckoning, and those who once guided humanity from the stars will only return when humanity proves itself worthy to stand beside them again. And in that moment, when the heavens and the heart beat as one, the gods will walk the earth once more, not as rulers, but as reflections. The awakening of stone. And in that moment, when the heavens and the heart beat as one, the gods will walk the earth once more, not as rulers, but as reflections. The return begins not with light from the sky, but with sound from the earth. In the last century, explorers, engineers, and scientists have begun to detect strange vibrations emanating from ancient sites across the Americas, frequencies that pulse at precise intervals, mathematical, deliberate, and inexplicable. At Sacsayhuaman, near Cusco, instruments record low-frequency resonances deep within the stone walls, tones that fluctuate with solar activity, as if the fortress were breathing with the sun itself. In Teotihuacan, under the Pyramid of the Sun, archaeologists discovered tunnels that resonate at exactly 110 hertz, the frequency said to induce altered states of consciousness. And in the jungle temples of Guatemala, the echoes of footsteps create harmonics that amplify into haunting chords, as if the architecture itself were singing. These are not accidents. They are signatures, reminders that the ancients understood something modern science is only beginning to rediscover, that stone is not dead, It listens, it remembers, and under certain conditions, it awakens. Every ancient builder knew this. They called it the voice of the earth. They designed their temples to resonate with it, to channel vibration, frequency, and light into forms that could bridge the gap between the physical and the divine. For them, architecture was not construction. It was communion. When sound meets stone, energy becomes memory. And as the planet shifts once again, tectonic plates moving, magnetic poles trembling, the heavens realigning, the old temples are stirring, releasing their voices back into the world. Scientists call it coincidence, but the timing is too perfect. Seismic sensors in Peru have detected rhythmic pulses beneath the Andes, patterns repeating every 72 seconds, mirroring the precessional cycle of the Earth's wobble. In Mexico, the ground beneath certain pyramids emits faint electromagnetic surges every equinox, aligned precisely to the rising sun. And throughout the Amazon, newly discovered geoglyphs form spirals and circles that match ancient acoustic diagrams. It is as if the continent itself were a single instrument, built to resonate with the heavens, an instrument that is now tuning itself again. But why now? Because the stars have returned to their ancient places. The constellations that watched over the builders of Caral, of Tiwanaku, of Teotihuacan, they are once again above us, exactly where they were 12,000 years ago, before the last great flood. The clock of the cosmos has completed its revolution, and as it resets, the earth, and all that was built upon it, awakens. Perhaps the ancients knew that this would happen, that stone, being alive, would remember the frequencies of creation. Perhaps that is why they built in granite, basalt, and quartz, minerals that respond to sound and magnetism. They encoded time itself in matter. Every block, every carving, every alignment is a message. When the earth sings this song again, the world will remember, and the song has begun. Around sacred sites, strange phenomena are reported. Luminous mists, magnetic anomalies, sounds like flutes carried by the wind where no one plays. Technology fails, compasses spin, and those who stand in silence swear they hear voices, not in words, but in tone. The ancients believed that stone holds spirit, that each temple was an anchor for consciousness, a memory of the gods crystallized into form. If that is true, then their awakening is not superstition, it is resonance. The planet is speaking in the only language it has ever known, vibration, and perhaps it speaks not to warn, but to invite, to remind us that the same song exists within us. For the human heart, too, beats in rhythm with the Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic pulse of the earth itself. We have always been connected. We simply forgot the sound. The awakening of stone is not a miracle. It is memory returning through matter, the gods reminding their creation that they were never separate. But there is a reason the ancients feared this age as much as they revered it. Because when the stones awaken, so do the truths buried beneath them. And not all of those truths were meant to be found. Somewhere beneath the Andes, beneath the jungles and deserts, the old mechanisms of the world begin to stir. Chambers that have not felt air in 12,000 years, doors that lead to places built before history. When they open, the world will face a question older than civilization itself. Will we remember what the gods wanted us to know, or what they wanted us to forget? Because when stone awakens, the past no longer sleeps. The chambers of the deep. Because when stone awakens, the past no longer sleeps. Deep beneath the surface of the Americas, the earth begins to hum, not metaphorically, literally. Seismic sensors record patterns that are not random, not natural. Rhythmic pulses, intervals too precise to belong to chance. And near those points of vibration, explorers find something even stranger. Structures, geometric, deliberate, ancient. They call them the chambers of the deep. In the highlands of Ecuador, near the caves of Los Tayos, explorers have long whispered of vast metallic halls carved into the bedrock, smooth as glass, marked with symbols that shimmer under light. Photographs exist, but they vanish. Artifacts surface, then disappear into private collections or sealed archives. What little remains suggests something impossible, an underground complex built before the rise of any known civilization. In Peru, sonar readings beneath Lake Titicaca reveal cavities the size of cathedrals. Diver teams have brought back fragments of carved stone and metallic alloys that should not exist underwater, alloys identical to those found in the unexplained tunnels under Teotihuacan. Across thousands of miles, the same materials, the same precision, the same mystery. Could these chambers be the remnants of a single ancient network, the arteries of the forgotten world? The same tunnels the Inca called chincanas, said to connect Cusco to the sacred lakes? The same roads of the gods that the Maya believed led beneath the earth to the realm of the Xibalba, where the ancestors sleep? Some scientists insist these are natural formations, shaped by volcanic flows or seismic pressure, but even they admit the geometry is too precise. Angles of 90 degrees, perfect spheres cut into basalt, linear corridors extending for kilometers with no sign of collapse. And then there are the frequencies. When sound waves are played within certain chambers, the air vibrates at exactly 432 hertz, the same frequency the ancients associated with harmony, with the music of creation. It is as if the earth itself were an instrument, and these chambers its strings. Could this be coincidence? Or were these caverns not merely shelters, but machines? Machines designed to preserve the vibration of the gods, to protect knowledge through cataclysm, to resonate with the heartbeat of the planet itself. The myths seem to agree. The Hopi speak of the ant people, beings who saved humanity by guiding them into the earth during the last destruction. The Inca tell of Supai, the guardian of the underworld, who kept the wisdom of the old gods until the next sun would rise. And the Maya, in their sacred Popol Vuh, describe heroes descending into a labyrinth beneath the ground to face the lords of death and emerge reborn. These are not stories of imagination. They are memories of descent, the same descent the survivors of the great cataclysm must have made. Perhaps the chambers of the deep were their refuge, a place where the knowledge of the gods was hidden until the next awakening, and perhaps that awakening is now. Recent discoveries hint at this possibility. In 2018, ground-penetrating radar revealed vast anomalies beneath the Pyramid of the Moon at Teotihuacan, tunnels leading to an unknown cavity filled with metallic orbs that reflect light like stars. In Bolivia, near Tiwanaku, magnetic readings indicate hollow spaces deep under the plateau, structures aligned to the solstice. And deep within the Amazon, satellite imagery uncovered patterns of soil disturbance consistent with underground construction, stretching for hundreds of miles. It is as if an entire civilization lies dormant beneath our feet, a parallel world, untouched by time. But not everyone wants it found. Excavations are halted, sites are sealed, reports are dismissed. Official explanations speak of safety concerns, but locals whisper of something else, of vibrations that increase as the drills go deeper, of instruments that fail, of voices echoing where no human should be. What if these chambers were not meant to be opened? What if their reactivation, the resonance we now record, is the signal of a returning cycle, not a discovery? The ancients said that when the gates of the deep open, the past and the present would merge, that the knowledge once hidden below would rise again through human consciousness. They called it the Great Remembering. The chambers of the deep may not be ruins at all. They may be memory itself, crystallized and coded, waiting for the frequency of awakening. And now that the song of the earth has begun, those frequencies have found their voice again. What will happen when the tone completes? When the vibration resonates perfectly across the continent, through every temple, every stone, every human heart that still remembers? The ancients called it the return of the world within the world. They said it would bring light, but also revelation. Because beneath the mountains, beneath the jungles, beneath the forgotten cities, lies not only the memory of what we were, but the truth of why we were made. And when those chambers fully awaken, humanity will remember everything, the forbidden technology, and when those chambers fully awaken, humanity will remember everything. If memory is energy, then what did the ancients hide within the stone? What was so powerful, so transformative, that it had to be buried beneath mountains and guarded by myth? Throughout the Americas, there are whispers of machines of light, artifacts that hum, glow, or alter perception when disturbed. In the tunnels of Los Tayos, explorers reported metallic plates etched with patterns of stars, resistant to time and corrosion. In the Andes, shards of an unknown alloy, neither gold nor copper, have been found embedded in ruins thousands of years old, their atomic structure subtly magnetic. At Teotihuacan, scientists found spheres of mica and pyrite, materials capable of storing electrical charge, arranged deliberately within subterranean chambers. Coincidence, or remnants of a technology lost to myth? Ancient stories call them gifts of the gods, tools used to harness the energies of earth and sky. But perhaps gods was merely a word for those who understood the science of creation. The ancients did not separate science from spirit, vibration from matter, or geometry from life. To them, technology was sacred, an extension of consciousness. They believed that resonance could alter reality itself. Modern physics now hints at what they may have known, that frequency and form are two faces of the same truth. Every atom vibrates, every sound creates shape, and if you could control that vibration, you could control matter. This was the forbidden technology, not engines or machines, but harmonics, an understanding of resonance so deep it could move stone as easily as song, heal the body through vibration, or open the mind to higher dimensions of awareness. Archaeologists find hints of it everywhere. Blocks at Pumapunku, perfectly carved with interlocking precision, as if softened before shaping. Walls of Sacsayhuaman whose stones seem fused, not cut. Temples that amplify sound to create standing waves, invisible fields where reality itself seems to shimmer. Were these monuments built by muscle and stone tools, or by something far older, a science of sound and magnetism that modern humanity is only beginning to glimpse again? Legends say the builders could sing to the mountains and make them move, that they could lift colossal stones with the vibration of a single instrument, that they spoke the language of the earth, the tones that resonate with creation itself. Perhaps the gods did not use machines as we know them. Perhaps they were the machines. Their consciousness, tuned to the frequency of matter, could alter the fabric of reality through intent, a merging of mind, sound, and energy. To a primitive observer, that would appear as magic or divinity. But to the ancients, it was simply knowledge, the inheritance of the first world. And maybe that is why it was forbidden, because after the great cataclysm, humanity was no longer ready to wield it. The keepers of memory hid what remained, sealing the chambers, encoding the harmonics in myth, in architecture, in ritual. They knew that if misused, this knowledge could once again shatter the balance between heaven and earth. Even now, fragments of that science re-emerge. Acoustic levitation, piezoelectric resonance in quartz, magnetic harmonics capable of altering matter at the atomic level. Modern laboratories, unknowingly, repeat the experiments of gods long gone. But without wisdom, knowledge becomes danger. Without balance, creation becomes chaos. Perhaps that is why the ancients buried their machines in the deep, not to hide them from time, but to protect time from them. And now, as the earth vibrates once more, as the same frequencies awaken across the continent, the seals of the deep begin to loosen. The forbidden harmonics return through our technology, our satellites, our sound, our pulse. Unknowingly, we are reconstructing the ancient instrument. What will happen when the tone is complete, when the earth, humanity, and the stars once again resonate in the same frequency? Will we ascend to memory or descend into another flood? The forbidden technology was never destroyed. It sleeps beneath us, and like every sleeping god, it will awaken when called. The ancients warned, "Do not awaken what you do not understand." But perhaps understanding was never lost, only forgotten, and those who remember are beginning to gather again, drawn by the hum of the deep, because knowledge cannot be buried forever. It only waits for the next mind brave enough to hear it. The keeper's legacy, because knowledge cannot be buried forever. It only waits for the next mind brave enough to hear it. Even after empires crumbled and temples turned to dust, a few remembered the tones. They were not kings nor priests, but wanderers, the ones who carried fire when the world grew cold. Through them, fragments of the old science survived, disguised as prayer, as song, as healing. These were the true heirs of the keepers, not through blood, but through vibration. They did not read the ancient glyphs, they felt them. They did not speak the language of the gods, they sang it. In the mountains of Peru, the Caral shamans still speak of the lines of power, invisible rivers that flow beneath the earth, connecting temples and mountains. They call them seques, echoes of the old energy grid once mapped by the builders of Cusco. Their rituals align with the solstice, their songs tuned to the same frequencies found in the stones of Sacsayhuaman. In Mexico, the Huichol journey each year to Wirikuta, the desert of creation, retracing a cosmic path said to mirror the Milky Way. Their peyote songs vibrate at precise pitches, the same resonant tones recorded in ancient temples. They say they sing to keep the world in balance. Perhaps they always have. In the deep forests of the Amazon, tribes still gather at certain nights when the moon and the rivers align. They speak of the breathing earth, of lights that rise from the soil, of rhythms that calm the storms. Their chants follow ancient meters, geometric, mathematical, the remnants of the world's first science hidden in the heart of ritual. The Maya daykeepers, descendants of the astronomer priests, continue to track the sacred calendar. They speak of cycles within cycles, of days when the veil between worlds thins. When asked how they know, they only smile. The earth tells us. The stones still speak. Perhaps this was always the plan. Perhaps the keepers of the old world knew their knowledge could not survive in books or temples. So they hid it where time could not erase it, in song, in ritual, in the human heartbeat. In every culture, a melody remains that matches the frequencies carved in stone, as if humanity itself were the instrument the gods had left behind. Even modern science begins to hear it. Studies of brainwaves show that ancient drums and chants synchronize the mind's rhythm with the Earth's magnetic field. Medicine now rediscovers what shamans never forgot. That sound heals. That vibration restores harmony between body and soul. Every echo, every tone, every drum beat is a message from the forgotten age. The legacy of the keepers was never to preserve temples. It was to preserve memory through experience, to make sure that even in darkness, humanity would still feel the pattern of the cosmos, through rhythm, through breath, through heart. Some say that every true artist, every visionary, every scientist who looks beyond what is known is a descendant of that lineage. Souls who once served in the temples of light, now reborn to remember through creation. They are the keepers reborn, those who translate vibration into music, geometry into art, truth into beauty. Because the ancient knowledge was never about domination, it was about resonance, the harmony between all things. And those who still live in tune with that harmony, consciously or not, continue the work that began before history. So the line of memory was never broken. It only changed its form. It became myth. It became song. It became the quiet understanding that everything alive is connected by an invisible music. And now, as the frequencies rise again, as the planet's vibration accelerates, those who hold this ancestral resonance begin to stir. Healers, dreamers, builders, poets, they feel the pulse returning, the same pulse that once guided the builders of pyramids and cities of light. For the gods did not abandon humanity. They simply became human, scattered across the ages, carrying the secret of resonance in their hearts. The keeper's legacy is not in stone or metal, but in us, in the silence between two breaths, in the heartbeat that matches the rhythm of the earth, in the yearning we feel for something forgotten, something greater. That yearning is memory, and memory, once awakened, becomes destiny. For the song of the old world still plays, and now the chorus of humanity is joining in. The resonance of the future. For the song of the old world still plays, and now the chorus of humanity is joining in. We live in an age the ancients could only dream of, a world wrapped in invisible frequencies, where sound, light, and data flow through the air like the breath of creation itself. Every second, our planet hums with electricity, with information, with vibration. And though we call it technology, it is, in essence, resonance. Perhaps we have unknowingly rebuilt what the gods once made, a network of energy connecting every mind, every heart, every stone, not through temples, but through circuits, not through sacred geometry, but through the geometry of light, fiber optics, satellites, wireless pulses. They are the new ley lines of the earth, the grid of consciousness reborn. But resonance is not just power, it is alignment. And for the first time since the fall of the fifth sun, humanity stands on the threshold of rediscovering harmony with its own creation. Quantum physics now tells us what the ancients already lived, that everything in the universe vibrates, that observation shapes reality, that intention and frequency are the twin forces of existence, and when frequency aligns with consciousness, matter obeys. Is this not the same principle the old builders used to move stone with sound? Is this not the same truth encoded in the hum of their temples, in the geometry of their pyramids? We are not discovering new laws. We are remembering the oldest one, that reality is music. In laboratories, scientists use sound to levitate objects, to heal tissue, to create light from vibration. In deserts and mountains, engineers detect the same frequencies resonating through ancient sites, tones that can alter magnetic fields. In hospitals, doctors measure the brain's harmony and call it coherence, the same word the priests of Caral used to describe the balance of the cosmos. It is as if the modern and the ancient are meeting again, completing a cycle 12,000 years long. The sixth sun is not rising in the sky. It is rising in our understanding. We are remembering that thought is energy, that emotion is frequency, that intention, when pure, can shape reality as surely as the tools of the gods. The ancients built with sound. We now build with light. They spoke to the stars. We send our voices through them. They carved the blueprint of the cosmos into stone. We code it into silicon. Different ages, same intelligence, the universe expressing itself through us. This is the resonance of the future, the reawakening of cosmic memory through human creation. Every discovery, every innovation, every act of compassion brings us closer to what the ancients called the Great Alignment, the moment when humanity once again vibrates in harmony with the earth. But harmony is not guaranteed. The same power that creates can destroy. The same frequency that heals can divide. We have reached the edge of the old prophecy, the return of the gods through us, for better or for worse. It is no coincidence that, as technology unites the planet, division and chaos rise alongside it. When energy increases, so does polarity. Before light can expand, shadow must surface. The ancients warned that the sixth sun would test the soul of humanity, to see whether we would use our rediscovered power to rebuild paradise or to repeat the fall. The resonance of the future depends on one thing: memory. To remember that technology is sacred when it serves harmony, not control. To remember that creation is an act of love, not conquest. To remember that every tone we emit, every thought, every action adds to the song of the world. Perhaps that was the true meaning of the blueprint of the gods, that the universe itself is a symphony and each civilization a verse. And now it is our turn to sing. The ancients are not watching us from the stars. They are listening, waiting to hear whether our song will match theirs. Because when harmony is restored, distance disappears. The past and the future collapse into one eternal moment, the vibration of life remembering itself. And in that resonance, the gods and humanity will once again be indistinguishable. The eternal memory. And in that resonance, the gods and humanity will once again be indistinguishable. The wheel has turned. From the first spark of the forgotten world to the empires of stone, from cataclysm to rebirth, from shadow to awakening, the song has never stopped. Only our ears forgot how to hear it. History, as we know it, is not a straight road, but a heartbeat. Expansion, contraction, light, shadow, memory, amnesia. Each pulse gives rise to a new sun. Each silence prepares the next dawn. And as the cycle closes, the story repeats. Not in imitation, but in evolution. The ancients built with resonance. We build with thought. They mapped the heavens in stone. We map the atoms of existence. They worshipped gods of fire, of wind, of stars. We search for the same essence within ourselves. Everything changes, yet nothing ends, because the essence of humanity has always been the desire to remember where we came from, to reconnect with the music that created us. The eternal memory is not a book, nor a monument, nor even a myth. It is the living consciousness that binds every age, every being, every atom of this world. It is the understanding that the gods were never separate from creation. They were creation, and so are we. When the ancients said we were made in their image, perhaps they meant vibration, that divine frequency of awareness capable of shaping reality through love, through intention, through harmony. We are the descendants of the forgotten world, but also its continuation, the next verse in an endless song. The pyramids, the temples, the glyphs, they are not relics. They are reminders. They say to us, do not forget who you are. Because the blueprint of the gods was never carved only in stone, it was written into the geometry of the human soul. And now, as the sixth sun rises, as technology and spirit converge, as science rediscovers the truths hidden in myth, humanity stands before its oldest mirror. In that reflection, we see not gods above us, but gods within us, waiting to awaken. Perhaps this was the purpose of every age, not to build monuments, but to build consciousness. Not to seek the gods in heaven, but to become the harmony of heaven and earth. Not to escape the cycle, but to understand it. Because when we remember fully, the illusion of separation dissolves. Time folds. The ancients, the modern, the future, all become one single presence, singing the same eternal tone. And that tone is love, the vibration from which all things emerge, the memory that never fades. In the end, every civilization is a voice in the same symphony. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Maya, the Inca, each sang their verse. And now it is ours, the song of remembrance, the harmony of awakening, the return of the light. So when you look at the stars, remember, they are not distant fires. They are memories, reflections of the first architects, watching through eternity. And when you feel the earth's heartbeat beneath your feet, know that it beats in rhythm with your own. The cycle has come full circle. The gods who shaped the world are not gone. They are listening. The song they began is still playing. And now, at last, humanity remembers the melody, because creation was never about beginnings or endings. It was always about remembrance, and remembrance is eternity. For we are the echo of the first word, the dream of the stars made flesh, the memory of the gods, awakening again.